part of a two-part series where we are talking about engagement rings and wedding band trends of 2021. So this is the wedding band. So we're going to cover everything from the styles, the aesthetics, what to look out for. So just jump right in. In terms of setting styles for rings, a lot of the times now in 2021, it is skinny as possible. It's the name of the game. People don't want to see metal anymore. They want it to be as thin as possible and accentuate the diamonds as much as possible. And so we have a lot of rings like this. As you can see, the metal is very flush with the diamonds. I generally don't recommend going any thinner than 1.5 millimeters because it's just not a good idea to go that thin for something that you're gonna be wearing every day. That's the most common thing that we're asked for. We do see a little bit of bright cut setting here and there, more kind of like the Art Deco and the vintage aesthetics, but for the most part, it's pavé and it's thin pavé. So in contrast to these ultra skinny bands, we're also seeing cigar bands. So I think this is a really cool trend. I love it. I love how it kind of looks like a little bit masculine. If you don't know what it is, it's basically a lot of women have been pairing their thin classic engagement ring with a very thick wedding band. So very thin, not thick, very thin, but very wide. And so it looks great. I love it. I love a masculine look. I think it has kind of like a power feel to it. We've been definitely seeing a lot of that. Not so much in white gold, but in yellow gold. That seems to be the trend. I don't know how long it's going to stick around for, but it is a trend that I highly love. Another thing that we're seeing is chevrons. So if you don't know what a chevron is generally, it's a band that has a curve in it. So instead of being like a simple band, it's a band that has generally kind of like a point. It can be even rounded, whatever. These are kind of coming through because I feel like over the last few years, there have been more and more want for non-conventional wedding bands. Like even if their engagement ring is conventional, their wedding bands seem to be kind of like mismatched. So they'll even go with like a completely different aesthetic, a different style of setting. It's as if like the wedding bands nowadays are not necessarily having to match like they used to. Like a lot of people actually like the fact that they look slightly different in contrast to their engagement rings. So you see that playing around a lot with chevrons. The chevrons are also used to often accentuate the actual center stone. We'll see kind of like the more simple engagement ring, but then the wedding band will be very ornate, and that is going to kind of come around and decorate the center stone. I've seen it kind of be done in sets of 2 or even 3 bands, where the chevron will be on the back side, the engagement in the middle, and then another chevron on the front. That kind of like creates one big piece. I love this idea because it makes kind of like a more ornate piece. Another thing is that in having these separate kind of like entities, you can actually kind of, one, give them as anniversary gifts. So maybe in 5 years, you can kind of like stack them on, which I think is really cool. And 2, you can also wear them on other fingers. So if you want to kind of have a less ornate piece, then you can kind of like mix and match them and it will look great. For wedding bands, we're also seeing a lot of clusters, and they can be either in mixed clusters, they can be done on chevrons, they can be done on straight bands. We're seeing a lot of play of non-conforming bands. They're kind of like all over the place, and they're not even necessarily symmetrical. They can be non-symmetrical. We can see them a lot along the actual band itself, kind of like spaced out. So it's a really fun thing to kind of like accessorize a more simple engagement ring. It has a very feminine look. Cluster bands generally tend to not be too expensive. If you want to add slight hints of color, adding slightly different shades of, like, for example, blue sapphires, that could be really interesting to consider. For wedding bands and engagement rings, I generally don't recommend ever going anything like a full eternity. By full eternity, I really mean when you have diamonds set all along the band. The reason why is because generally speaking, these are rings that you're going to be wearing for like your entire life, and within your lifespan you will probably have to get the ring resized at least once, maybe twice. And so because of that, when you're cutting into the bottom of the shank, if it's a full eternity, it creates a lot more complications. You may have to add more money if you add diamonds. Like, it's not of a clean precision. So if you have a 3/4 diamond ring, it makes it very, very easy for your jeweler to repair it, to adjust it, to resize it. It's something that I generally recommend to my clients. Full eternities can cause problems down the road. In terms of gold colors, it's still the usual. Honestly, white and platinum I think is predominantly the most. We are seeing, however, a large wave of yellow gold, and rose gold, however, is really dragging behind, which is to be expected. I think a lot of times when we do see rose gold, they are in those more kind of like vintage boho aesthetics. We don't generally see them for the more classic designs. Yeah, I think that probably the reason why we are seeing more yellow gold right now is actually because it photographs better on social media, which sounds crazy, but that is the reality. White gold in pictures often looks like silver. It looks a lot less luxurious versus when you have yellow gold, it really pops on camera. And so I think the years that we've had being on social media and shopping on social media has probably heavily influenced those decision making. So I think it's really interesting. So yeah, I'd love to know what wedding band you guys would choose, whether it would be important that it's matching or not matching. Even the wedding bands, like, would you choose the same color of gold? Because I've seen recently a few people have not been choosing the same color of gold. So let me know what you guys think. See you next time.